American retirees could add $200 this November if they pay attention to this latest news. Hello, my name is John, and I created this channel with the sole purpose to provide the most straightforward Social Security payment-related news, updates, and advice. You can listen to me as a senior friend of yours. Without wasting any further time, I must tell you about the delightful news regarding your Social Security payment. Please watch the entire video and subscribe to my channel. It's a friendly request to you. You've probably heard the buzz. Maybe your neighbor mentioned it at the mailbox, or perhaps you caught wind of it on the news. There's talk everywhere about a $200 boost coming to Social Security checks. $200 every single month. That's the kind of money that could change things for millions of Americans living on fixed incomes. It could mean finally fixing that leaky faucet, buying the medications without choosing between pills and groceries, or maybe just breathing a little easier when those bills arrive. But here's where things get interesting, and honestly, a bit complicated. Because what you're hearing about this $200 boost isn't exactly what it seems. And before you start planning how to spend that extra money, we need to talk about what's really happening in Washington right now. Let me be straight with you from the start. This story has twists and turns that would make a soap opera jealous. There are proposals floating around Capitol Hill, politicians making promises, and seniors across America waiting to see if any of it will actually land in their bank accounts. Some of what you're hearing is real. Some of it is hopeful thinking. And some of it, well, let's just say it's more complicated than a simple yes or no answer. So settle in, because we're going to untangle this whole mess together. And by the end, you'll know exactly where things stand with your Social Security benefits. First things first, the $200 boost everyone's talking about, it's not just one thing. It's actually two completely different proposals, both promising the same amount of money, but in very different ways. Think of it like this. Imagine two different restaurants both advertising a steak dinner, but one's offering you a 6-month special while the other claims they'll serve it to you every month for the rest of your life. Same steak, completely different deals. That's what we're looking at here with these Social Security proposals. The first proposal came from some pretty big names in the Senate. We're talking about Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, Chuck Schumer from New York, and Ron Wyden from Oregon. All Democrats, all pushing hard for something they're calling the Social Security Emergency Inflation Relief Act. Now, doesn't that sound official? It should, because these senators mean business. They've seen what's been happening to seniors across America, watching people struggle as everything from eggs to electricity has gotten more expensive. They've heard the stories about retirees skipping meals, cutting pills in half, and keeping their thermostats at uncomfortable temperatures just to make ends meet. And their response was this proposal. Give every Social Security recipient an extra $200 a month for 6 months. 6 months. That's the key detail here that a lot of people are missing when they hear about this boost. This isn't a forever thing, at least not in this first proposal. We're talking about emergency relief, short-term help to get people through what these senators see as a particularly rough patch. The money would flow from January 2026 through July 2026. That's it, half a year. But here's the thing. Even that limited boost would mean an extra $1,200 in your pocket over those 6 months. For someone living on a modest Social Security check, that's not pocket change. That's real money that could cover real needs. But wait, because this story gets more interesting. There's a second proposal out there, and this one is playing for much higher stakes. This one's called the Social Security Expansion Bill 2025, and it's not messing around with temporary measures. This bill is proposing to give every eligible Social Security recipient that same $200 monthly boost. But here's the kicker. It would be permanent. Not for 6 months. Not for a year. Forever. Or at least for as long as you're collecting benefits. Now we're talking about real money. If you're 65 years old and expect to live into your 80s, we're potentially talking about tens of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. That changes the math completely. This permanent boost would cover everyone in the Social Security system. We're not just talking about retirees here. This would include people receiving Supplemental Security Income, also known as SSI, which helps disabled individuals and seniors with very limited income. It would include people on Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, who can't work because of serious medical conditions. It would even include survivor benefits for widows, widowers, and children who lost a working parent. Everybody in the system would see the extra $200. The sponsors of this bill are thinking big, trying to fundamentally change the benefit structure for millions of Americans. Now I know what you're thinking. This all sounds pretty good, right? Who wouldn't want an extra $200 a month? The question burning in everyone's mind is simple. When do I get my money? And that's where we need to pump the brakes and have an honest conversation about how things actually work in Washington. Because the reality isn't as rosy as those headlines make it sound. Here's the hard truth that nobody wants to say out loud. Neither of these proposals has passed. Not the 6-month emergency boost. Not the permanent increase. Not a single dollar of that $200 has been approved by Congress. Both of these bills are just that, bills. Proposals. Ideas sitting in congressional offices waiting for votes that may or may not ever come. And when we look at the political reality of where things stand right now, the picture gets even cloudier. Let's talk about the 6-month emergency boost first, the one from Senators Warren, Schumer, and Wyden. These are powerful senators, no question about it. Chuck Schumer was the Senate Majority Leader for the Democrats. These aren't freshman legislators shouting into the void. They've got experience, connections, and they know how to get things done. But here's the problem they're facing. Republicans now control both the House of Representatives and the Senate, both chambers of Congress. That means for this Democratic proposal to become law, it needs to convince Republicans to vote for it. And if we're being honest with each other, that's a tall order. Republicans have historically been skeptical of expanding Social Security benefits, particularly when it comes to emergency spending that isn't paid for with corresponding cuts or revenue increases elsewhere. They worry about the deficit, about adding to the national debt, about creating what they see as unsustainable spending patterns. Whether you agree with their reasoning or not, the math is simple. Without Republican support, this bill isn't going anywhere. It could sit in committee forever. It could get a vote and fail spectacularly, or it might never even make it to the floor for debate. That's the reality of divided government. And it's the reality facing this $200 emergency boost right now. The permanent increase proposal faces similar challenges, maybe even tougher ones. Think about it from a fiscal perspective for a moment. Giving millions of Americans an extra $200 every single month, forever, costs an enormous amount of money. We're talking about tens of billions of dollars every single year added to the Social Security budget. Where does that money come from? How do we pay for it? These are the questions that keep proposals like this from becoming law, even when there's widespread agreement that seniors need more help. The political will to spend that kind of money, especially in an environment where both parties say they're concerned about the national debt, just isn't there right now. Some folks involved with this permanent boost proposal have suggested that if everything went perfectly, if the stars aligned and the bill somehow passed through both chambers of Congress and got signed by the president, payments might start around July or August of 2025. But let's be clear, that's best-case scenario thinking, and it requires about a dozen things to go right that currently show no signs of going right. It requires bipartisan support that doesn't exist. It requires budget negotiations that haven't happened. It requires political compromises that nobody's even discussing yet. Could it happen? Sure, anything's possible in politics. Is it likely? That's a different question entirely. So where does this leave you? If you're sitting there wondering whether to expect this $200 boost in your next Social Security check, the answer is no. It's not coming next month. It's not coming in the foreseeable future. Both proposals remain just that, proposals. Dreams on paper that haven't been transformed into actual law. And the frustrating truth is that they might never be. Bills get proposed in Congress all the time with great fanfare and hopeful press releases, and then they quietly die in committee without anyone outside Washington ever hearing about them again. It's possible that's exactly what happens to both of these $200 boost proposals. But here's what is real, what you can actually count on: the official cost of living adjustments that the Social Security Administration announces every year. These aren't proposals or maybes or political footballs. These are actual, confirmed increases that are already law, already calculated, and already being deposited into accounts. Let's talk about what you're actually getting. For 2025, Social Security benefits increased by 2.5%. Now I know that doesn't sound like much, and honestly, it isn't much compared to what people need. But it's real money that's already in your checks. For the average Social Security recipient, that 2.5% increase works out to about $50 more per month. $50 isn't $200, I know. It doesn't solve all your problems or make everything comfortable. But it's something, and it's guaranteed. You can count on it. You can budget around it. Looking ahead to 2026, the Social Security Administration has already announced next year's cost of living adjustment, and it's slightly better than this year's. Benefits will increase by 2.8% starting in January 2026. For the average recipient, that means about $56 more per month. Again, not the $200 everyone's hoping for, but real money nonetheless. That's an extra $672 over the course of a year. For someone living on a tight budget, that could be the difference between keeping the heat on or wearing extra sweaters, between getting that prescription filled or trying to stretch the pills you have. These cost of living adjustments are based on inflation calculations. The Social Security Administration looks at something called the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. It's a mouthful, but basically it measures how much prices are going up for everyday goods and services. When inflation is high, like it has been recently, the COLA adjustment is supposed to go up to help benefits keep pace with rising costs. When inflation is low, the adjustment is smaller. It's not a perfect system, and plenty of seniors will tell you that the official inflation numbers don't reflect what they're actually experiencing at the grocery store or pharmacy, but it's the system we have. And that's where the frustration comes in. The reason why senators like Elizabeth Warren are pushing so hard for these larger boosts. Senator Warren and her colleagues have been vocal about their belief that the current COLA adjustments just aren't cutting it. They've pointed out that a 2.5 or 2.8% increase barely covers the rising costs of groceries and utilities. They've shared stories from constituents who say that by the time they pay their electric bill and buy their medications, there's nothing left over. The COLA increase disappears before they even notice it was there. These senators have a point. If you've been shopping for groceries lately, you know that prices have jumped significantly. Eggs, milk, bread, meat, all of the basics cost noticeably more than they did just a couple of years ago. Your electric bill probably looks different too, especially if you've been through a harsh winter or brutal summer. Your property taxes might have gone up. Your Medicare premiums definitely aren't getting any cheaper. When you add it all up, that extra $50 or $56 a month starts to feel pretty insignificant against all the increased expenses you're facing. That's the core argument behind both of these $200 boost proposals. The senators pushing for them believe that Social Security recipients need more than incremental cost of living adjustments. They believe people need substantial help, real relief that makes a meaningful difference in their daily lives. $200 a month would be meaningful for most seniors. It would be noticeable. It would allow for some breathing room in budgets that have been squeezed tighter and tighter over the past few years. But belief and action are two different things in politics. Believing that seniors need more help is easy. Actually passing legislation that provides that help is hard, especially when it involves spending significant amounts of money. Every dollar that goes to increased Social Security benefits has to come from somewhere, and that somewhere usually means either raising taxes, cutting spending elsewhere, or adding to the deficit. None of those options are politically popular, which is why even proposals with good intentions and real need behind them often go nowhere. So what should you do with all this information? How should you think about your Social Security benefits going forward? First and foremost, don't count on money that hasn't been approved. As much as we'd all love to see that $200 boost become reality, planning your budget around it right now would be a mistake. Base your financial planning on what's certain. The COLA adjustments that have already been announced and implemented. That's the solid ground you can stand on. Second, keep following the news, but be skeptical of headlines that make big promises. You're going to see articles claiming that the $200 boost is coming, that it's been approved, that checks are going out soon. Most of those articles are either misunderstanding the situation or deliberately misleading people for clicks. The real story is more boring. Proposals exist, but they haven't passed. That might change, but until it does, the proposals remain just proposals. Third, understand that this issue isn't going away. The fundamental problem that these bills are trying to address, the fact that many Social Security recipients are struggling to make ends meet, isn't going to disappear on its own. That means we'll continue to see proposals like this in the future. Maybe not these exact bills, but similar ones. Different politicians will keep pushing for increases, adjustments, and reforms to Social Security because the need is real and widespread. Some of those future proposals might have better chances of passing than these current ones do. Fourth, make your voice heard. If you feel strongly about this issue, contact your representatives in Congress. Let them know how you're managing on your current benefits. Tell them what an extra $200 a month would mean for you. Share your story about choosing between medications and meals, or keeping your house warm and keeping your lights on. Politicians respond to constituent pressure, especially when enough people make enough noise. Your representative might not be sponsoring these bills, but they need to hear from the people they represent about what's actually happening in their districts. The reality is that Social Security is going to be a major political issue for years to come. We have a massive population of baby boomers reaching retirement age, which means more people depending on Social Security than ever before. At the same time, the trust funds that help pay for Social Security are projected to face challenges in the coming years. Without changes to the system, whether that means benefit cuts, tax increases, or some combination of reforms, Social Security, as we know it, faces long-term sustainability questions. These $200 boost proposals are part of a much larger conversation about what Social Security should look like and how we fund it. That larger conversation includes debates about raising the cap on taxable wages for Social Security, which currently stops at a certain income level. It includes discussions about means testing benefits, so that wealthier retirees get less while poorer ones get more. It includes proposals to change how COLA adjustments are calculated, using measures that might better reflect seniors' actual expenses. All of these ideas are floating around Washington, some gaining traction and others going nowhere. The $200 boost proposals are just two pieces of this much bigger puzzle. For now, though, the bottom line remains unchanged. The $200 monthly boost, whether temporary or permanent, hasn't been approved by Congress. It's not in your check now, and it won't be in your check next month unless something dramatic changes in Washington. What you can count on are those more modest COLA adjustments. The 2.5% for 2025 that's already in effect, and the 2.8% for 2026 that's coming in January. Those are real, confirmed, and happening regardless of what Congress does or doesn't do with these larger proposals. It's disappointing, I know. When you first heard about a $200 boost, your mind probably started making plans. Maybe you thought about that dental work you've been putting off, or the home repairs that keep getting delayed, or just the simple relief of not having to worry quite so much about every expense. Those are reasonable things to hope for, and the fact that so many seniors are in positions where an extra $200 would make such a significant difference speaks to a real problem with how we're supporting retirees in this country. But hoping for something and counting on it are different things, and right now, these boost proposals fall firmly into the hoping category. As the months go forward, keep watching the space. Monitor what's happening with these bills. Check reliable news sources for updates about whether they're advancing through Congress or stalling out. Pay attention to what your representatives are saying about Social Security and whether they're supporting increased benefits. And remember that while the system may be slow and frustrating, changes can and do happen when enough people demand them. Social Security itself started as a controversial proposal that many people thought would never pass, and now it's one of the most important and protected government programs in American history. Your Social Security benefits represent years of work, years of paying into the system, years of building toward retirement. You've earned every dollar that comes in those monthly payments. Whether they're enough to live comfortably on is a separate question, and for many people, the answer is sadly no. That's why proposals like these $200 boosts generate so much attention and hope. They represent the possibility of relief, of finally having enough to live with dignity and security in retirement. We're not there yet with these particular proposals, but the conversation is happening, and that's the first step toward change. The question is whether that conversation will turn into action, and that remains to be seen.